Hello, hello. Hello, beautiful souls. I think my mic is good to go. I saw that my mic was muted. Apologies for that. I'm just going to wait about another 30 seconds to a minute as I light my incense and my candles as people start trickling in. I'm really excited to be here. It's been a while. Wait a second here. How is everybody doing today? Drop me some comments in the chat. Hello. Little comments in the chat. How you're doing? How's our energy? Let's do a little check-in. Let's see who's here. As I just set the space. Hello, everyone. Yes, long time. Oh, hello. Yes. I am excited to be here today. It's an interesting day. It's been really rainy all day and chilly, and I'm in just one of these cocoon, like I just want to be by a fire and sleep kind of days. So I'm still bringing all my energy here today. I have a topic I have been really wanting to chat about actually, and to kind of go live with for a while, but just haven't gotten to it because, again, like most of the topics and most of the mysteries that I bring in here, they're very multidimensional and multi-layered. So it's really hard to cover everything in just an hour, but we'll sink in. But before we do that, just some little housekeeping. Hello from Denmark. Hello from California. Hello, Devin, UK. Hi. Hello. Welcome. Okay, so before I continue anything, a little housekeeping. I just want to make mention to anybody, especially if you're new here, to go and check out the Beyond Mystic YouTube channel. Give us a like, our Rumble channel. Like, share, subscribe. There's so much amazing content and courses and just so much lovely, so many, I always want to say this, but it's like there's just so many beautiful souls that take part on this platform in so many different ways, and everybody has just something beautiful to share. So go check them out at the Beyond Mystic platform. And while you're on the platform, there's also an academy. And for those of you who, again, might be new here, hey, I see Coco. Hi, Coco. I love it. Go check out the lovely consultations by all of our wonderful facilitator practitioners, mystics. Oh, all of the lovely souls again on this platform all have some beautiful medicine to share on their consultations. That's on the Academy page. And I also want to just say out loud, thank you so much for those of you who have already booked and had some sessions with me, some lovely deep womb sessions, consultations, I should say. They're just so profound, and I'm really happy that I can support you in that way. So okay. Where do we go today? I always do this. I say, I am leaving it to spirit. So usually I'm like, oh, where are we going to go? Because there's just so many places we can go and we can chat. And something that's really been wanting to come through for a while now is the topic of psychedelic medicine, plant medicine, psychedelics. And I'm going to get into it a little bit today. I think it's important in so many ways with this, the last, I would have to say, probably, more condensed over the last 5 to 7 years. There's been a lot more coming out into the mainstream around psychedelics and ceremonies and, even clinical sessions with psychedelic. I mean, there's just so much coming out now, right? Yes, this is free range thinking. This is the oracle. Like, this is how we just tap right in, and really whatever wants to come through. I just have wholehearted faith that this is what needs to be said at this time in the present. Although I do have a couple of little notes that I might refer to in terms of just some points that I don't want to forget to talk about as long as I have time. But yeah, like I'm just gonna go. Yes, interesting topic. Yes. Okay. So are we ready? Are we ready to dive into this? Because there's been so many requests actually for me to actually just speak about my experience, and then as also part of the work that I do, like on the priestess path and the shamanic path, and in the ceremonial and sacred arts. So where can we begin? I'm going to begin by saying, first and foremost, that I do not have all the answers. Okay, I don't. I am just going to be speaking from a place of my own personal experience, my own personal entrainment, and obviously, like, not just my personal experience with psychedelic medicine and plant medicine, but essentially also the experiences that I have been witness to and honored to be able to have, like, held people in these spaces. Okay, so this is where this conversation is going to come from. All right, so I'll give you a little bit of background before I go into all the other points. But I love this. Let that shit out. I love it. Yes. Yes. You guys are making me crack up with the comments today. I love it. Okay. Oh, hey, Meg. Hey. Okay. So let me give you some background. As most of you who have either met me or worked with me or have been on this show and watching me, you know a bit about my story. And my story really, the healing path, the journey, like all of this, the spiritual path, really opened up for me, or began for me around, 15, I want to say about 15 years ago. And along that path, I have done many, many modalities in terms of using different tools to really go deeper within my healing and go deeper into the inner realms of self. And early on in my journey, I would have to say, and this was when I was really in the thick of post-traumatic stress. And, again, I was consciously unconscious, and I had a lovely counselor at the time. And this is going way back. I want to say probably in 2015, something like this, 2015, 2016. And funny enough, I listened to a podcast, and at that time, I wasn't aware. I really was not aware of the sort of shamanic psychedelic space. Obviously, at that time, I was still very much in the government world, the policing world, and drugs were drugs, right? Although I was very open-minded and I was not judgmental. At the same time, I had never heard the word ayahuasca before. I had never, I knew mushrooms existed, but I had no idea that they were these sacred beings that were used for ritual and rites of passage and initiation, right? Okay. So, again, long story short, I'm on my healing journey, and I listened to this wonderful podcast, and they're talking about ayahuasca, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is the next step. I gotta get to Peru, and I have to do this thing called ayahuasca. Like, it just resonated, like you know what? I honestly, guys, I think it was like a Joe Rogan podcast or something at that time. I think it was just like when everything just started coming up around, like the ceremonial arts and things like this. And I just felt it so deeply, like that was going to be a very important next step for me to take. And I was also very conflicted because at the same time, I was a police officer and I wasn't allowed to do these things, right? And again, you're going back to 2015, 2016, where like we did not have access to the same kind of I would say, like, information in terms of like the spiritual path and the awakenings and the consciousness. Like, it just wasn't out there the way it is now back then. Yes, Graham Hancock, amazing. I love his work. So So yeah, so essentially I went to my counselor and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to Peru. I don't care. My life, it's like literally my life and my family, or like I don't know what I'm going to do, right? I was struggling really hard. I was in really, like I said, like the depths of PTSD, and nothing at that point was really helping me to get to the root of like the issue, right? Of course, let's not even go on to the topic of like my environment at work and what it was, and like that's a whole other story. But essentially, this is the juncture I was at that time. So my counselor then looked at me and said, "Well, what if you didn't have to necessarily fly to Peru for this, right? What if we could support you and maybe just refer you out? There are some contacts and connections, and we can kind of start the path on that." And so that's what I did. And one thing led to another. And my first experience with psychedelic medicine was not actually ayahuasca, it was MDMA. And it was MDMA done in a very sacred space, with like a very intentional space. And at that time, it's because there were a plethora of studies that were coming out through MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. It's in the US, and there is a Canadian branch. But this was Rick Doblin, and he was doing a whole bunch of studies on first responders and Navy SEALs with severe complex traumas, and the use of MDMA assisted psychotherapy, and what was happening there, and all of these breakthroughs that these people were having with MDMA. And so I trusted and I had faith. And guys, I'm not going to lie to you, this one session, this one like ceremony, I'm going to get all emotional. Whew, it really, really like changed everything. Everything. Now, I am saying this, and I'm not saying MDMA is the way, and blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm saying. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is at that time, I had also done a very, like, how would I say, like a large amount. I had done a large amount of nervous system work already. I had done a large amount of counseling and preparation, and just understanding of like inner child work and shadow work. And really, and I'm going to get to these parts later about like psychedelic medicine and ceremony, but I was ready. I was ready. And so I decided to then go on to this next step. And so I did this ceremony. It was MDMA assisted psychotherapy style. And it changed everything. It took one session and it completely uncalloused my heart. And so I guess you could say that was sort of I was at the threshold and the precipice of sort of my second grand awakening, right? And this was, yes, that was your path to awakening. Absolutely. And we all have our own unique individual path. Although this was not what awakened me to begin with. Like I'm very, very open around how my children coming into this world and how they came into this world was really my first major awakening, right? This years later, then I had this ceremony, and this is kind of my second grand awakening. And so that really shifted everything for me. And I'm not going to lie, I was just at the point where I was like, well, you know what, if it costs me my job, it costs me my job. I was already questioning a lot of the morality and value pieces around a lot of the corruption that I was witnessing anyways within the institution, within the organizations. Obviously, all of that was out of alignment with my moral compass, with my value system, like my soul's moral compass, my soul's value system. And so this ceremony really brought me into a place where I was able to experience what we can call Gnosis, right? It's one thing for me to sit here and tell you all about this and speak to experiences, but it's a whole other thing when we actually go in and have the experience ourselves. And that is what births this Gnosis within us, right? So that gave me the Gnosis to then start stepping forward into the unravel of identity that was needed for me to leave that world and then come into more alignment with who I am, what I'm here to do, my actual service work, all of these things beyond very particular identity. Okay. So that's my little story of how I stepped into the world of psychedelic medicine. From that point moving forward, it was very clear that I was to really study and entrain in, the realm of consciousness, right? So I did the, breath work facilitation. I got certified with that. And then I started really in training in the shamanic, like the deeper shamanic arts. And a lot of that entrainment did involve the plant world. And I'll fast forward with it because we only have an hour here, but like essentially, I did a good 6-month entrainment with Bufo. And for those of you who don't know what Bufo is a toad. It's a secretion that comes from toads. Don't get this confused with Cambo. Cambo is a different secretion that comes from a tree frog, little tree toad, little tree frog. And Cambo is something that really helps you to cleanse and detox and purge toxins, while Bufo is an actual, like it contains DMT, right? So this is the toad that literally goes underground for a very long part of the year in the desert. It's a desert toad, so it goes underground. And while it's in darkness, it secretes DMT. And so it's cultivated, again, with lovely intention. And again, I can get into all of those aspects later because there are things happening in the psychedelic world, in the plant medicine world, that are really wholeheartedly out of integrity, which is, again, a big reason why I want to do this show. And I'll get into that a little later. But essentially, Bufo is toad medicine. And without going into like all the details of like what it does, and it's just essentially like the point that I'm trying to make is that I became entrained with Bufo. And a big part of that training was obviously me having to experience the medicine over and over again. as most of the shamanic arts will, throw you into these death and rebirth type situations, right? Really big initiations. And so I did a big part of my training with that. I also entrained in the world of ayahuasca, and I sat with beautiful ayahuasqueros, which are basically shamanic practitioners who've like really devoted their life to, and lineage and generations to sitting with this plant, collaborating with the plants, collaborating with this consciousness, right? And then really learning how to be able to hold that space for others as, they go through their personal journeys. So ayahuasca and Bufo, and so, I danced in those arts for years. And what was really beautiful moving forward on all this, and again, guys, I can probably do like 10 shows on this, but I'm just trying to like keep it short. What ended up happening was that ayahuasca, so for anybody here who's ever done ayahuasca, you know how absolutely intelligent this consciousness is. I believe she is not of this earth. She is, a very cosmic, very, she is the essence of feminine, essence of grandmother, really essence of dragon. And she comes in, and when we mix these two beautiful components, like, the vine and the leaf, like the chacruna and the vine and all this, and we mix her in, and we boil this into a tea, and you drink her. Yeah, it's just a really incredible intelligence that knows she's just in her mastery, and she just knows how to guide you on your unique path, right? And so some people have had, just beautiful, beautiful experiences. I don't believe that there ever is really, people will talk about bad tripping and all of this, and essentially it's a lot of that has to do with, set and setting, or like who the practitioner is. But like the bad tripping piece is that I really believe that if we are well prepared, and well guided and well integrated, that there's no actual such thing as a bad trip when we are in sacred space. So, yeah. So ayahuasca, after, a couple of years of in training to her and with her and in that space, and like, supporting others through their journeys and all of this, she was very clear to me. She made it very clear. She says, child, like she addresses me as child. She's very much grandmother for me. She says, I've taught you everything I can, like literally teach you in this life. She says, you can always come and do more, but essentially you understand my voice, you hear my voice, you understand the message, like you're holding my frequency, right? And I think that was like such a beautiful piece, because it helped me part ways with that path in specific. Like I literally had to come into self and be mature enough to say, you know what, after all of these years of thinking this was the path, I'm going to listen, and I am going to actually move in a different direction and come into completion with this journey with her, right? And so she led me to my lineage. So many people out there, and again, like we're always seeking like this belonging, like as if we don't belong, but we do. And so many people are seeking, like, what is my lineage? Like, what is my culture? Like, and we go to the indigenous lands and we go to the indigenous elders, and, but what she taught me is, she's like, go to your lands, go to your elders, go to your ancestors. And yes, again, I'm just looking at some of the comments, like ayahuasca also may not be for everyone. Okay. Like that's a whole other piece, on like preparedness and yeah. Okay. So, for me, ayahuasca really pushed me towards understanding the Mediterranean mysteries. Ayahuasca really pushed me towards coming into, like deeper remembrance with, again, it's just one of these days, guys. Like I'm just gonna get emotional. It's like a rainy day, and I'm like, ooh, yeah. She just really brought me into this beautiful remembrance of like my ancestors. Go to the Mediterranean, go study those Mediterranean mysteries, go back to those lands, And as I did more and more of that, and guys, like this is like a whole, like these are years worth of like stories and all of this, right? But yes, and I'm actually going to talk about the Eleusinian mysteries. Actually, so yes, I'm going to go there. So as I started doing a lot of that, and really, I had already been on the priestess path, and I had already been studying the ancient Egyptian mysteries, and a big reason as to why I want to talk about this now today is that, psychedelic medicine truly, these are the resurrection mysteries. And like, we are coming up to these, holidays right now, Easter and the resurrection and Good Friday and Easter Monday and all of this. And I mean, there's so much that is coded into those like mysteries, into those days, like beyond, religion. There's so much consciousness around all of that. And so we are at a time of the resurrection, and like some of, I shouldn't say, like most of the ancient resurrection rites of passage happened with the assistance of psilocybin, right? Like mushrooms. There's a ton of really good books on this that I can also recommend. One is called Food of the Gods. It's by Lawrence McKenna. It's a beautiful read for anybody who wants to read that. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole ton of books that you can get into. Graham Hancock has some really beautiful ones. And but essentially, these plants, right, throughout time and history were used as resurrection rites of passage. And the ancient Egyptians were no different. And the ancient Greeks actually learned like when we talk about the Eleusinian mysteries, what are we actually talking about? They actually took on a lot of the ancient Egyptian mysteries, but the difference between the Eleusinian and the ancient Egyptians were that, for one thing, the ancient Egyptians reserved these rites of passage very specifically for pharaoh, high priest, high priestess. Like nobody else was to do it, right? I'm talking about before those templates turned and before there was like corruption and all of this. And so it was held in such sacredness. And this is a really important piece around what is happening today and how we are actually mainstreaming something that is so sacred that we are losing, and we are we are losing through the dilution of these rites of passage, the actual sacredness, right? Of the ceremony and the actual like understanding of what's happening. Anyway, again, I'll get into that a little bit later. But, you know, what happened with the Eleusinian mysteries is that they learned from the ancient Egyptians. And so where the ancient Egyptians were using mushrooms, I'm going to actually show you guys some. Let's see if I can get this up here. I love this. Take a peek at this. Oh, no, that's not the one. Give me 1 second. I don't know. You're going to have to give me a second. I'm trying to fiddle like with these pictures. Here we go. Does that work? There we go. Yeah. So as you can see, these are hieroglyphs of, a priestess. And like you'll see at the bottom here, hanging off her hands, what literally are mushrooms. It's right. They're psychedelic. They were used in ceremonies. And what else did they use? They used blue lotus, right? Blue lotus was also a psychoactive in some ways, and the way they would prepare the lotus. And you guys also have to understand that the blue lotus at that time, and the very particular genus of blue lotus at that time, is very different from the ones that we're seeing today, like that are being sold today. Even if they're coming in from a lot of those parts of the world, the genus is very different. And there's actually somebody at UC Berkeley right now who's studying this exact thing that we're talking about. And they're actually I think they've actually succeeded in recreating and growing actually one of the original genuses of blue lotus from ancient Egypt that really no longer grew on the Nile. So the potency is very different. So I just wanted to say that for, I can get into that whole thing again. But essentially, it was the priestesses that held these mysteries, that understood these mysteries, that really held the ceremonies and understood these rites of passage. And so when we get into the Eleusinian mysteries, what we see is that the ancient Greeks, so, people like Plato and like all of these, really brilliant minds actually took part in the Eleusinian mysteries. And so they would happen around the harvest. Was it the harvest? I believe it was around the harvest, because it was all around like Demeter and Persephone and Demeter. And it was like all a bunch. And I mean, again, I don't want to get too much into that whole part of the mythos and all of this, but essentially they were celebrating the goddess. Okay. And in that celebration of the goddess and the underworld journey, so it was Persephone's journey into the underworld, what would happen was, they would come together in community. And so their only rule at the time, in order to take part in these rites of passage, was essentially that you could not have killed anybody. But other than that, as long as you're a good person and you haven't killed anybody, you can take part in this mystery school. Okay. And so they would prepare a drink, and it was like a tea. And again, nobody's really fully aware of what kind of psychedelic. I have heard that it has psilocybin in it, but it was prepared with other things, maybe a wine, maybe something else. The ancient Egyptians loved to prepare their psychedelic brews in wine. Okay. And this particular one from Greece was called the kekion. And they would serve this, and people would have their huge experience, and then they were sworn to secrecy and they weren't allowed to talk about it. except that people would talk about it when they were on their deathbeds. And so this is how we've cultivated, some of this. And so the Greeks, whereas the Egyptians believed that these rites of passage for like these resurrection mysteries were like really only reserved for the high priest, high priestess, and pharaoh, the Greeks took it to another level, right? And so what have we also been seeing over the last 5 to 7 years, at a time where, our planet, our beautiful Earth, all of the consciousness, all of this stuff is, the shadows are coming up, right? And we're moving into a more ascended, expanded collective. Well, psychedelic medicine is also a big part of what I believe, and why I believe it's come back in this way to help support us. The plant world is really brilliant in that way. These conscious beings are really brilliant in that way. They know when it's time to come and to collaborate with humanity, right? And to support that next stage of evolution. So essentially, like, I'm just picking up on some of the like little mysteries here and there, but let's get into the whole like plant medicine piece. So I've been in this world now for quite some time, and I've had to consistently remove myself from different spaces where I felt that these ceremonies or like things were very out of integrity. And so what we are seeing a lot of, unfortunately, are the actual abuse of these medicines. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like, practitioners allowing people to come back for more. Here's another ceremony. It's like, a ceremony every week, a ceremony every month. Unfortunately, there's no preparation being done. Unfortunately, there's no integration being done. Ceremony needs to be a process, right? And how this works is, if our body is not prepared as a vessel, as a physical vessel, to hold a peak experience, right? Because we're having this peak experience, we're opening ourselves up, right? Now we're having this peak experience. But if our nervous system hasn't been somewhat prepared to go into this experience, we're literally blowing out the system. So you're going to come out feeling like, oh, this is amazing. And then you're going to crash. Essentially, the crash is a little normal, but that's when we have to get support on how to integrate the experience. So there's a lot of people out there that are just that are serving these medicines without proper initiation themselves, without devotion to the arts themselves, like proper devotion, without proper entrainment. Some people are going to, let's just say, like an ayahuasca retreat. They may do 10 days. They may have done like 3 to 6 ayahuasca ceremonies in those 10 days. And then they're like, yeah, ayahuasca told me it's my time to serve the medicine now. And yet you've got lineages of people who have like been born and raised in this since the time that they were just like young, and it was like their grandparents served and their grandparents served. And it's like, this is a sacred art that is really carried, right? And I'm not saying all people do this. I'm just giving you guys glimpses into a lot of the experiences I was having that were very unfortunate. And, there are certain pockets of the world where, the environment is really rich with retreat centers, and, it's just like you can literally get ayahuasca and psilocybin and bufo on every street corner. I have very particular experiences where like I've been put into actual groups, like signal groups or this and that for practitioners. And I'm watching, I'm just reading some of the messages, and like some of these practitioners are offering like weekend courses on bufo. Like, come and do bufo on Saturday, and by Sunday you're going to be ready to go out into the world and serve it to people. Like, wow. Really out of integrity and dangerous, right? So when I say dangerous, it's because here's the thing, guys, like would I ever, like you would never say, for instance, like go to your family doctor to perform heart surgery. And yet so many people are embarking on these journeys, these psychedelic journeys, without even understanding, right? What they're opening their field up to. Some people are embarking in journeys with like 10, 20, 30, 40 participants. 40, right? And we need to understand that when you're opening your field to that degree, you're expanding your consciousness to that degree, you're actually tapping into fourth dimensional realms. And what's in the fourth dimensional realm? There's a lot of disembodied entity. And so those disembodied entity that are looking for a place to seed, a place to latch, a place to hook in, they're going to find those matching resonance, those matching frequencies within your trauma spaces. And they're going to go right in there. And if you don't have a really trained shamanic practitioner who understands this and who knows how to work with this, you're going to come out of that ceremony energetically way more messed up than the way you went in. And there's not a lot of people talking about this because it's become a very monetized, lucrative industry. And that's sad. So it's sad, and it's, there's like, again, it's a very nuanced topic, okay? So these medicines, these plant medicines, these plants, they're beings, they're conscious beings. They demand respect. These are high intelligent beings, and we must give them reverence. And that goes for your hape, that goes for your microdose, that goes for any plant you decide to come into collaboration with. I see people, microdosing is the next answer. Well, it's, they're using it the same way they would use a glass of wine. It's not the answer when we consistently feel the need to outsource to something else to bring us into balance. These are tools, right? And there's a process, a reverent process that we need to kind of follow as we come into deeper connection with them. Okay, so I'm about midway through. I'm going to get into some other things, but before I had a little bit more housekeeping to do. Okay, I want to let's talk about some plants here, like plants and something else. So I'm going to, give me 1 second. I'm just going to pull this up here. Okay, I want to pull this up. All right, let me tell you a little story. These soaps. Okay, this is Floraline. This is Aline. I hope she's okay with me saying this story, but one of the first times I actually met Aline, she actually came to my home because she used to live near me. I used to live near her, I should say. And she brought me a bouquet of beautiful herbs and plants and flowers from her garden. And, you could just see how much love and intention that she had for these beings, right? She is such an earth fairy, like an earth goddess. She just loves it. And now she's literally transferring all of this into her soap. All of this love that she has, she's making these beautiful soaps, which I personally have bought. I bought some at the conference. I got some at the conference. I'm so happy I did. They're lovely. They feel good. They smell good. So I'm just putting this up here because she has just launched her new website, I believe. And so if anybody's actually interested in her soap, you can go and check out her website at floralinefarm.ca. And if you use the Beyond Mystic code, you get your 10% off. So definitely try those out. And I'm going to put up one more little thing here. Here we go. We have part 2, right, with Meg and Janine, level 2 of opening psychic senses. And definitely, those of you who are interested in this, go check this out. You can, again, get your 10% off with the code OPEN10. Again, I was so happy I got to meet these ladies in person at the conference. They hold so much wisdom. And so anybody who is really looking at, getting a little deeper into understanding our sentient senses and our psychic my God, I'm about to say sentences. Senses. Definitely go check them out. Okay. Let me get back to, yes, the plant medicine. What do I have here? Let me just check out some of the comments here. Psilocybin used to be in vogue to step into a journey. Yeah, these plant medicines have to be respected and held in sacred space with experienced practitioners who've done this for decades or passed down from generation to generation. Yeah, 100%. A lot of, wow, hey Donna, thank you, you're very welcome. Gene Decode says from experience that astral travel into fourth dimension is not advisable for this very reason. Negative entities reside there. Yeah. So again, I'm not trying to say like be afraid or it's not like that. It's just that this is a natural part of the process, right? Of understanding what you're opening yourself up to when you journey, right, with plant medicine. And especially when you're journeying in a group with others, right? So you have to understand that that's a shared field, right? So I always tell people there are really good questions that, like, if you're thinking of doing these things, or going on a journey, or a certain plant is calling you, or something is calling you, there's always like very good questions to really ask your facilitator practitioner, right? And I can do another show on this because clearly I'm not going to be able to go through all this in 15 minutes, but let's talk about consciousness, right? Consciousness, it's not just a signal in the brain. And this is what I'm seeing, so much interesting stuff happen. So over the last 5 to 7 years, I've been seeing clinics pop up all over the place, the same way I've been seeing retreat centers pop up all over the place. A lot of clinicians coming from the scientific background of the benefits of psychedelic medicine for mental health. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying what I have seen out there is not so pretty in terms of, ketamine clinics. And let's just talk about ketamine for a quick minute. It's a dissociative. It's not even a real psychedelic. And if you really want to get into it, I believe that it's part of a technology that came in through the NAA. So you want to talk about like alien technology? This is this kind of like gray alien technology. It takes you into a K-hole for a reason. It is clearly being pushed on veterans right now through different ways, through different veterans affairs. There's so much I can talk about on this. So many people are like, oh, ketamine, it really helped me out. And it's like, well, and then 6 months later, they're back in the hole again. Again, it's, very different than ayahuasca or, an organic being. And what I'm seeing a lot of that's happening is that these clinics are popping up everywhere, and you're getting clinicians, because of course the government and the laws around psychedelics being decriminalized or coming back to be like legal in certain states, or like decriminalized in certain states, they're still trying to have control on a lot of it, right? And so in order to have control around a lot of it, they're also putting it into the hands of clinicians because they're calling it medical. So long as it's medical, right? Anyway, so I'm seeing a lot of clinicians who've had maybe 1 or 2 journeys with a particular medicine, who have zero shamanic entrainment, zero energy entrainment, and they're doing these very sterile ceremonies, very sterile. And, again, for some people it might work. For most, it's not. And again, we're at another unfolding of all of these truths, especially over the last 5 to 7 years of what's like really coming up. And we are coming back to a more organic understanding and application of how to be in collaboration with these beings. So consciousness, again, is not just a signal in the brain, right? Consciousness is what I feel is a presence that really moves through form, right? And what is actually moving in form? The presence is this feminine essence. Why is it a feminine essence, right? It's the feminine, it's the form of this feminine essence through which consciousness flows, because it's cyclical, it's creative, it's very fluid, it's a remembrance. All of these aspects are governed, by feminine principle. Okay? And why do I say that? Because again, each plant works differently, right? So like psilocybin is going to work much differently than ayahuasca works, than bufo works. But what all of them have in common is that you are literally creating, it is the divine feminine. Okay. We are creating neural pathways. We are creating remembrance, right? This is creation that is moving through you as you collaborate with these beings. There is a mystical aspect, the mystery aspect of this, right? What is the mystery? We call it the dark eye within, the void, the womb, right? These are all aspects of what comes up in consciousness and understanding. And so it all comes back to the whole part around the experience based, like the wisdom gained through the experience, which is really why psychedelic medicine is so powerful, because you are literally having an experience that translates into wisdom, and that wisdom becomes Gnosis. Okay? Gnosis doesn't ask you to believe it, right? Gnosis shows you the truth. Okay, so bear with me. This is why these plants were what I call those original sacraments. This is why they were part of resurrection rites of passage, death and rebirth, expansion, evolution. I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's no evolution without creation, right? They are here. These beings are here to help us remember. They're here to help us remember who we are, right? They're not here to command or control. That's a power over system. They're here to whisper to us in the mystery, like a mother would whisper to her child, gently nurturing. This is the feminine essence. And of course, this has been written out of history. Of course, right? If I can actually access divinity within me in collaboration with the natural world, and I don't need permission to do it, that's not good business for the systems that want to control us, right? Mycelium, right? The mycelium, the mushrooms, right? This is an organic internet. This is an organic web of web networking underground. What do we think of underground? We think of the dark soil. What do we think of the dark soil? It's a web in the void. It's a web in the dark. It's connecting us in to the mystery, right? This is where the feminine code exists. When we start tapping into that, we start tapping into a symbiotic intelligence that is in harmony, that restores harmony within us, right? And you can go, I mean, I can go on and on and on about, like, you can go into, like, you know, Gnostic Christian art, and you can actually see a lot of the art, how they depict Christ, right? Christ being the Christed consciousness, that expanded consciousness. There are some art pieces where you see the Christ rising from this bowl, and this bowl is held. Actually, do I even have, I don't think I have pictures of this, but no, I don't have pictures of that on here. But anyways, it's just interesting because it's like, it's all mycelium. It's like, oh, you mean the expanded consciousness is actually being birthed through the bowl, the womb, right? It's so interesting. It's like, you know, there's so much here. Of course, the untrained eye can't see any of this. Okay. So, like, you know, it's always like for the eyes to see and the ears to hear, right? But it all begins underground, right? This creation, this wisdom. You know, and essentially it always comes back down to what I like to say, that, you know, truth that cannot be owned is what is in fact feared, right? So truth that cannot be owned is in fact what is really feared. And when we get into, like, the Gnosis piece again, and we get into understanding that Gnosis doesn't need mediation. Like, you know, you don't really need that. And that's the other thing, is, like, you know, there's so many plant medicine facilitators out there that are, you know, this, very ego based, you know. It's like, oh, they hold all the answers, they hold all the keys, but essentially, no, like, you're there on behalf of service to the plant and to those that are collaborating with the plant, because your job is to dance in the energies. Your job is to simply create a safe container for creation to happen. Right? That's the job. That's kind of like the service, right? And being witness to that and being able to support the preparation and the integration of that. Yeah. So essentially, you know, again, this is just like the tip of the iceberg of everything that is, like, really truly on my heart in terms of what I love to teach and speak to. And again, I teach in a way, or guide in a way, based on my experiences of this world in terms of the plant medicine world. You know, and the wisdom that I've gained, and the mistakes that I've made, and, you know, the integrity that really has to go in with great responsibility when we choose to walk this path of service in this way. And yeah, let me just take a look quickly at some of the comments. If anybody has questions, just pop them in. I'm happy to answer questions. We got about 5 minutes left as well. I'm just reading the comments here. Yeah, organized religion is a mixed bag. Some people need that uniformity and dogma. Yeah, sure. I'm not putting it down. And I always like to say that, you know, and this could be spicy for some people, religion is not the problem. What humans have done to religion becomes the problem. Religion holds codes. The divine feminine was never lost. You know, so many people, it's like, oh, she was eradicated. She was eradicated. Again, she was never actually fully lost. She was coded. She's been coded in many ways in the different religions, again, for eyes to see and ears to hear, or for those who could hear and those who could see, right? I just want to make sure I'm going to hit this point here. You know, it's funny because, yeah, we can talk about Magdalene being written out in certain ways and all of the, you know, there's so many other stories around this, but essentially the divine feminine was veiled. Okay. Like she was veiled. She was encoded. But you could still find her in those mycelium spores. You could still find her if you chose to open your eyes. You could still find her through bone and blood, right? She's always been part of creation. You know, I always like to say that that, you know, when we talk about truth and how truth kind of enters the field, you know, because truth is so infinite, and we all have our different levels of truth, but when truth is really entering the world or the field or your field, it enters, and the way, you know, even the plants have shown me, like it enters not with this like beam of light. You know, most of us think, oh, it's just like this one like white light that comes in, right? This is truth, illumination. But what is truth, right? And when we look at like the feminine and the creation aspect and the natural aspect, we got to look around our natural world. Our natural world is colorful. Light is a spectrum, it's colorful. And so truth, this illumination that enters like a prism, right, enters as a spectrum of light. And the spectrum holds different codes and holds different frequencies. And it's in the spectrum that Gnosis awakens, right? And that is a solar frequency. A lot of you have heard me talk about the solar feminine. This is a solar frequency. The spectrum of light, right? That's what the sun gives us, is a spectrum of light, sunrise, sunset. Anyway, I think I'm about at time. Okay. I can get really carried away on these topics. But yeah, I think at the end of the day with plant medicine, we just want to be discerning. I don't even want to say careful. I say we want to develop discernment in how we collaborate with these beings, in who we're collaborating with, right? We want to know where the medicine's coming from. I want to know like whose hands, whose energy is going into making the brew, right? I want to know, how are you going to prepare me? How are you going to integrate me? I want to know your experiences as a facilitator. What is your background? And guys, I don't give a shit about certification, right? Because everything I spoke about has nothing to do with certification. We're trying to certify the mystery. It cannot be certified. We're trying to certify gnosis and experience and wisdom. That cannot be certified. I want to know how many times you have sat in your own death and rebirth cycle and how you moved and navigated through that so that you can then hold me through it as well. Right? Again, that's small piece. So anyway, if I'm going to get going, I got to get going because I'm like at time, but I would love to do maybe even another show on this because there's just so much that we can talk about like plant medicine and all the things that are happening now. But essentially, yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions. If you have any more questions on this, shoot me an email. You can find me, my website, which is under construction. So bear with me, but you can go to www.intamana.ca. You can find me on my Instagram at priestess_of the blue fire. And just, you can shoot me some questions there. And I've written a lot of content around psychedelics. And so there's some good information on there as well. And I do DNA activation days. I do, this is a process that I offer, that I've been offering for years in different ways. And you can actually just go on my website and even read some testimonials on that. But essentially, when we work with the plants, we work in reverence with them. And yeah, if I do help people. I teach them. Not only do I sit with them in ceremony, but I also teach them how to come into deeper collaboration. If they're choosing to work with hape, or if they're choosing to work with psilocybin, how do you do that in reverence? How do you do that, and protect and safeguard your field, your physical, energetic body? And how do we come back to ancient wisdom around it, right? So anyways, okay, guys, love you all. Hit me up if you need. Don't forget to go on to the Beyond Mystic platform, go on to the YouTube channel, Rumble channel, hit like, share, subscribe, do all the wonderful things. And anybody who also needs any support with womb consultations, you can find me there, and you can find a ton of other beautiful people offering plethora of different kinds of consultations that are here to support your expansion and your journey on the Beyond Mystic Academy. Okay. I'm sending everybody love, and see you soon. All right. Bye.